Welcome to this special edition of Capitol Dateline, Florida Speeches. Our focus is the ceremony that designated Orlando State Senator Andy Gardiner as the next Republican Senate President. He will assume that position in November 2014 and continue throughout 2016. The position of Senate President is one of the three most powerful in state government, along with the Governor and Speaker of the House. During the designation event, Senator Gardiner outlined his goals for his presidency. We will hear excerpts from his speech and will interview him about those goals. Senator Gardiner was first elected to the State House in 2000 and to the State Senate in 2008. Senator Gardiner, 45, is a former majority leader of the Senate and will oversee Senate Republican campaigns in 2014. A graduate of Stetson University and a Florida native, he is father of 2 daughters and 1 son. Before we hear from Senator Gardiner, we will first highlight portions of his designation ceremony. The majority leader of the Senate began the session.
In our leadership, but one common theme that you will hear today about our next president, Senator Gardiner, is the undercurrent of compassion. For it is his caring about his fellow man and his constituents and his family that really distinguishes him as all that we should aspire to as Republicans. So it is an honor, and we will look forward to hearing great things about you this afternoon.
Senator David Simmons nominated Senator Gardiner to be the next Senate President.
During his time in the House and the Senate, Senator Gardiner has had a special passion for advocating for children with special needs. He understands and lives the axiom so aptly expounded by Winston Churchill, that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. I remember serving in the House with Andy Gardiner when he was pushing for insurance coverage for vital autism services. Prior to 2008, many insurance policies excluded coverage of autism therapy. Senator Gardiner worked fervently to pass SB 2654. He was determined and dedicated and did not give up, even as the end of session neared. His dedication paid off when the bill passed on the last day of session. This legislation requires insurance carriers in Florida to cover evidence-based autism screening, intervention, and treatment for children. The lives of thousands of children and their families have profoundly benefited from his dedication in sponsoring and passing this legislation. Just this last session, he sponsored legislation to give parents more empowerment with their special needs children's educations. The bill, which was signed into law, requires a parent to approve a school's changes to their child's individualized education program and encourages collaboration between parents, private instructors, and the school.
Senator Aaron Bean then seconded Senator Gardiner's nomination. He reminded senators of Andy Gardiner's first campaign for the House in 2000.
To get here, we had similar routes Andy and I did, separated by a drive on I-4 and I-95. Neither of us were supposed to win, according to the Tallahassee smart people, the press, and the punditry, especially Andy. He had a 4-way primary, then a very tough runoff, and then a well-regarded general election opponent. But the way he did it was very old-fashioned. No television, no radio, no negativity. He talked about what he wanted to do, how he wanted to represent the district where he was born, where his grandparents had settled, where his mom and dad had raised him, where he and Camille would raise their family. And the way he did it, the old-fashioned way, was to go door to door and knock and introduce himself and ask questions and give straight answers, and above all, to listen. Because these were his neighbors, his parents' friends, his community. These were the people that watched him grow up. Andy, I know, we all know that all of your family and friends here from back home in Orlando and across the state are so very, very proud of you. Mr. President, I'm confident that Andy Gardiner will lead the Senate in the best interest of the people of the state of Florida, and I am proud to second his nomination for President of the Florida Senate.
The next order of business was the election of the Senate President-designate.
And the Senator of the 40th District, Senator Diaz de la Portilla, he rises, and for what purpose, sir?
Mr. President, I move that we now proceed to a vote of the Republican caucus.
Without objection, show that motion adopted. The Secretary will call the roll, and senators will respond in the affirmative by saying, Andy Gardiner.
And all the senators did just that, and Gardiner was unanimously elected. Current Senate President Don Gaetz introduced his successor after the vote.
Careful in what he says, Andy Gardiner is relentless in what he does for the causes he cares about. Compassionate in his human values, he is rock solid in his conservative principles. Committed to Florida's natural resources, not because he heard testimony somewhere, not because somebody lobbied him, but because he bikes those trails. He swims those springs and rivers. He runs those paths around the lakes and through the forest. Andy Gardiner is young with 1,000 victories ahead of him. He is tested by life, tempered by experience, and with a strong backbone, a warm heart, uncommon sense, and an optimism as warm as the central Florida sunshine in which he grew up to be a man. Andy Gardiner is the face of the new Florida. And that's why it is my high honor and deep personal privilege to present to you the President-designate of the Florida Senate, Senator Andy Gardiner.
The title of President-designate is a courtesy bestowed by the caucus to provide the designee with the opportunity to learn and prepare. But it's also the responsibility of the designee to make sure that our party and our caucus has the resources necessary for each one of you, each incumbent, each member to come back and be successful in 2014. That has been my goal, and that is what I will continue to do. That's my role, and that's what I believe in.